The hegemony vessel, impenetrable, emerged from hyperspace with geometric precision, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight in patterns that human astronomers immediately recognized as intentional communication. 17 kilometers long and shaped like an elongated hexagon, it dwarfed the international welcoming fleet that had assembled in high Earth orbit after 3 months of preparation for this historic moment. Inside the United Nations Special Contact Facility in Geneva, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Diplomats fidgeted with translation devices, while military personnel maintained rigid postures that barely concealed their anxiety. Scientists huddled around displays showing the approaching alien vessel, their excited whispers forming a constant background murmur. Marcus Chen, a quantum engineer from the Global Science Initiative, had never expected to be present for this moment. His invitation had come just 24 hours earlier, a rushed addition to the delegation after the hegemony had specifically requested Earth's leading dimensional researchers be present. "They've been watching us for decades," whispered Dr. Yamamoto, his mentor, and the head of their research division. "Their message said they've monitored our broadcasts since the 1940s. They know exactly who's who in every field." Marcus nodded absently, his attention fixed on the small device in his palm, his quantum resonance amplifier prototype. Barely larger than a smartphone, it represented 3 years of work that most of his colleagues still considered theoretical at best, delusional at worst. He'd brought it as a personal talisman rather than for any practical purpose. The facility's massive doors parted, revealing the hegemony delegation. 7 representatives of different species entered in perfect formation, each alien distinctly different from the others, yet moving with coordinated precision that suggested long association. Flanking them were mechanical constructs, not quite robots, not quite vehicles, that hummed with energy fields perceptible even to human senses. Leading the delegation was Captain Ilara Voss, standing nearly 2 meters tall. Her violet skin shimmered with subtle bioluminescence that shifted with her movements. 4 eyes, 2 primary, 2 secondary, scanned the human delegation with evident curiosity. Her exoskeletal components appeared to be both natural biology and integrated technology, a distinction that human scientists would debate for months afterward. "We greet Earth in the name of the Galactic hegemony," her translator device conveyed in flawless English, the words emerging simultaneously in Mandarin, Russian, Arabic, and 12 other languages through the facility's audio system. "Your species has reached the threshold of interstellar capability. We come to evaluate your readiness for limited integration." The UN Secretary-General stepped forward, delivering Earth's carefully crafted welcome message. Behind him, Marcus noticed the subtle tension in the hegemony representatives' postures, a detached amusement that reminded him of adults humoring children. The formal exchanges continued for an hour before the meeting transitioned to technological demonstrations. The hegemony representatives displayed devices that seemed to defy the laws of physics as humans understood them. Gravity manipulators, instantaneous communication devices, and most impressively, personal defense shields that rendered the user virtually invulnerable. "This standard-issue protection field," Captain Ilara explained, activating a shimmering blue barrier around herself, "can withstand forces equivalent to your most powerful conventional weapons. Each hegemony citizen is issued one upon reaching adulthood." She gestured dismissively toward the human delegation. "We understand your species still relies on physical armaments and primitive energy projection for protection." The Secretary-General, maintaining diplomatic composure, gestured toward the scientific contingent. "We've made considerable advances in quantum physics and dimensional research. Perhaps Engineer Chen could demonstrate our latest prototype." All eyes turned to Marcus, who suddenly felt the weight of humanity's technological reputation on his shoulders. He stepped forward, the small device in his hand drawing curious looks from the hegemony delegation. Ilara's primary eyes narrowed as she studied the device. Her mandibles clicked in what the human delegation would later learn was amusement. "How quaint," she said, her translator rendering what was clearly condescension. You've brought us a toy." The conference room fell silent. Marcus felt heat rising to his face as Ilara's dismissive comment hung in the air. Behind him, he could sense the other delegates' discomfort, the collective embarrassment of humanity on the galactic stage. The hegemony representatives exchanged subtle gestures that their translators didn't bother to interpret, but the sentiment was clear: amusement at primitive beings playing with technology they barely understood. Something shifted inside Marcus. 3 years of skepticism from colleagues, of funding battles, of sleepless nights perfecting quantum dimensional equations, all crystallized into a moment of clarity and, perhaps unwisely, defiance. "With respect, Captain Voss," Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt, "I believe you may be underestimating our approach." He held up the device, its matte black surface absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Perhaps a demonstration would be informative. The Secretary General shot Marcus a warning glance, but the diplomat beside him, Dr. Sato, an experienced negotiator, subtly nodded approval. Sometimes respect had to be earned rather than granted. Ilara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, an expression that humans would later learn indicated mild surprise followed by dismissal. A demonstration. Against what standard would you measure your device's capabilities? Marcus met her gaze directly. "Against your shield." A ripple of movement passed through the hegemony delegation. One of the non-humanoid representatives, a being composed of what appeared to be interlocking crystalline structures, emitted a series of chimes that caused the translators to produce a sound remarkably like laughter. "You propose testing your handheld device against shield technology perfected over 7 millennia?" Ilara asked, mandibles flexing in what humans would come to recognize as their equivalent of raised eyebrows. "I do." Marcus maintained his composure, though internally he questioned his own sanity. The resonator had never been tested against anything remotely like the hegemony shields. His simulation suggested it might work, but theory and practice often diverged dramatically. The Secretary General cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should move on, Toe." "No," Ilara interrupted, her interest visibly piqued. "I accept this challenge. It will be educational for both sides." She turned to her delegation. "Arrange a suitable testing area. Tomorrow." As the formal meeting concluded and the delegations began to disperse, Marcus found himself surrounded by a mix of concerned and furious human representatives. "What were you thinking?" hissed General Williams, Earth's military liaison. "You've potentially set up humanity for a humiliating technological failure in front of the most advanced civilization we've ever encountered." Dr. Yamamoto, however, studied Marcus with newfound respect. "You believe it will work, don't you? The dimensional resonance principle." "I'm not certain," Marcus admitted quietly, "but the math suggests it should. Their shields operate on principles of energy manipulation, creating barriers between dimensions. Our approach is fundamentally different. Even if it works," warned Dr. Sato, "there could be diplomatic consequences. Technology is power in interstellar politics." Back in his temporary quarters that night, Marcus disassembled and reassembled his resonator 3 times, making minute adjustments to its calibration. The device had never been intended as a weapon or shield breaker. Its original purpose was medical, using dimensional resonance to extract tumors without invasive surgery. Its potential military applications had been a footnote in his research, one that military contractors had dismissed as theoretically interesting but practically unfeasible. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on his secure terminal. It was from Dr. Yamamoto. "The hegemony delegation is discussing your device extensively. Their communications aren't as secure as they believe. Most are amused, but 2 of their scientists seem genuinely curious. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already accomplished something remarkable. You've made them pay attention. Get some sleep, Marcus. History awaits." Sleep, however, proved elusive. As dawn broke over Geneva, Marcus stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The face that looked back was tired but determined. "They think it's a toy," he told his reflection. "Let's show them how humans play." The military facility had been transformed overnight. What was once a utilitarian testing ground now featured seating arrangements for dignitaries from 17 nations and 7 alien species. Cameras hovered silently, broadcasting the event to billions across Earth and throughout the hegemony's vast territories. The atmosphere crackled with tension as much as with the electric anticipation of history in the making. Marcus Chen arrived early, his device secured in a brushed aluminum case. He'd spent the night making final calibrations, fueled by equal parts caffeine and indignation. The dark circles under his eyes betrayed his exhaustion, but his movements remained precise, deliberate. Several colleagues from the Global Science Initiative offered encouraging nods as he passed, though their eyes revealed doubt. "You're actually going through with this madness," Dr. Yamamoto whispered, falling into step beside him. "You realize the diplomatic consequences if this fails, or worse, if it succeeds too well." Marcus tightened his grip on the case. "They need to see us as equals, not as primitives they're graciously allowing to join their club." At precisely 1,000 hours, the hegemony delegation arrived. They moved with the practiced synchronization of a species accustomed to ceremonial displays of power. Captain Ilara Voss led them, her violet skin luminescent under Earth's sun. Unlike yesterday's diplomatic attire, she now wore full battle regalia, an ornate armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The message was clear. This was no longer just a demonstration, but a contest. The human delegation shifted uncomfortably. Several diplomats shot reproachful glances at Marcus, who stood alone in the center of the testing area, his unassuming device now removed from its case and resting in his palm. "The terms are simple," announced the hegemony's chief diplomat, his translator module converting his clicks and whistles into crisp English. "Captain Voss will activate her personal shield. Engineer Chen will attempt to effect it with his device. Observers will note the outcome." Ilara stepped forward, mandibles flexing in what humans had learned was amusement. She activated her shield with a casual gesture. The air around her shimmered and then solidified into a translucent blue dome. The shield technology, perfected over millennia, had withstood direct hits from weapons that could level cities. "Your military records indicate this shield has withstood forces equivalent to 20 kilotons of explosive force," Marcus stated, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly hushed crowd. "Is that accurate?" Ilara inclined her head. 23.7, to be precise. Marcus nodded, approaching slowly. The device in his hand appeared absurdly inadequate, barely larger than a smartphone, with a simple interface of 3 buttons and a small display. Several hegemony officials exchanged what appeared to be their species' equivalent of smirks. "I remind you," Marcus said, addressing the cameras as much as the audience, "that this technology operates on principles fundamentally different from conventional energy manipulation. What you're about to witness is not an attack, but a demonstration of quantum dimensional resonance." He positioned himself 5 meters from Ilara, whose posture radiated absolute confidence. With methodical precision, Marcus activated his device. The machine emitted no visible beam, no dramatic light show, just a barely audible hum that seemed to vibrate at the edge of perception. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like crystal shattering, Ilara's shield disintegrated. It didn't simply deactivate or collapse. It broke into thousands of glittering fragments that hung in the air momentarily before dissolving into nothing. The effect was as beautiful as it was shocking. Ilara stood frozen, 4 eyes widened in what could only be interpreted as disbelief. For the first time since humanity's contact with the hegemony, the aliens were speechless. The aftermath of the demonstration unfolded in controlled chaos. The hegemony officials had immediately sequestered themselves in a hastily established security zone. Their translators switched off to prevent human eavesdropping. Meanwhile, Earth's representatives were bombarded with requests for interviews from global media networks. Marcus found himself ushered into a sterile conference room by stone-faced security personnel, both human and alien. His device had been confiscated, placed in a containment field designed for unexploded ordnance. The irony wasn't lost on him. Quantum dimensional resonance, Marcus explained to the panel of 12 officials once they finally convened. 6 humans, 6 aliens, a superficial equality that didn't reflect the tension permeating the room. Our approach differs fundamentally from yours. Explain, demanded Coralteth, the hegemony's chief science officer, leaning forward on his 4 upper limbs, while the lower pair remained crossed in what humans had learned indicated skepticism. Marcus took a deep breath. Your civilization built its technology on manipulating energy to create barriers between dimensions. Our breakthrough came when we stopped trying to build walls and instead searched for doors. He sketched a diagram on the provided tablet. We don't fight against dimensional boundaries. We exploit their natural resonance patterns. Think of it like an opera singer shattering glass with the perfect note. The shield didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because, at the quantum level, we made the dimensions it was anchored to vibrate in sympathy. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony representatives exchanged glances loaded with meaning humans couldn't interpret. Impossible, Coralteth finally declared, though his voice lacked conviction. Our species have explored quantum mechanics for millennia. This approach should have been discovered. Perhaps, offered Dr. Yamamoto from the human delegation. You were too advanced to see it. The room tensed, anticipating offense, but Marcus quickly elaborated. What my colleague means is that advanced civilizations optimize existing paradigms. They don't often revisit foundational assumptions because what they have works. Humans, being newer to these physics, questioned everything because we had to. 3 hours later, after intensive questioning and heated debates about security protocols, Marcus found himself alone in the building's atrium, staring through the glass ceiling at the stars now visible in the evening sky. He heard the distinctive sound of hegemony foot covers on marble before he saw Ilara approaching. Gone was her ceremonial armor. She wore what appeared to be her species' version of casual attire, still formal by human standards, but lacking the intimidation factor of her previous appearance. Engineer Chen, she greeted him, her translator module now active again. I would speak with you, privately. They found a secluded corner away from prying eyes and surveillance. Ilara's 4 eyes studied him with an intensity that made Marcus uncomfortable. I have served the hegemony for 83 of your Earth years, she began. I have witnessed technologies that would seem like magic to most humans. Yet today, she paused, mandibles working in what Marcus recognized as their expression of deep thought. Today I was humbled. That wasn't my intention, Marcus replied truthfully. Wasn't it? Her upper eyes narrowed. Then what was your purpose? To prove that humans deserve a place at the table. As equals, not as curiosities. Ilara's mandibles clicked softly. You succeeded. Though not everyone in the hegemony will welcome this revelation. The Grand Admiral has already ordered a full assessment of all human technology. For collaboration, Marcus asked, knowing the answer. For threat evaluation, Ilara admitted. Then, unexpectedly, she leaned closer. Which is why we must work quickly if we are to prevent what comes next. The Hegemony Council chamber resembled an amphitheater carved from living crystal. Tiered seating accommodated representatives from 7 distinct species, each section modified to suit their particular physiologies. At the center, a holographic display replayed the shield-shattering incident for the 17th time that session. This changes everything, declared Ambassador Nixveril of the silicon-based Lithians. His crystalline voice reverberated through the chamber. If their technology can neutralize our defenses so effortlessly, what else might they accomplish? Grand Admiral Zaxun slammed his primary appendage against the smooth surface of his command console. The impact created a resonant boom that silenced the chamber instantly. The implications are obvious, the Admiral growled, his translator rendering his biochemical emissions into speech. Humans must be contained before they develop this principle further. They are unpredictable, emotional, and now, dangerous. The chamber erupted into overlapping arguments, each species communicating in their native manner. The Pyrite delegates glowed with increasing intensity, signaling agitation. The aquatic Merrick representatives released pheromone clouds that caused their section's containment field to activate automatically. "We should integrate them," countered Diplomat Kileth, the eldest hegemony representative. "Their perspective is valuable precisely because it differs from ours. Imagine what our combined technologies could accomplish. Or what weapons they could create," Zach Swoon retorted. "I have already dispatched a surveillance fleet to Earth's system. They await orders at the edge of their detection capabilities." Meanwhile, in a secured laboratory 70 levels beneath Geneva's International Science Complex, Marcus and Ilara worked in tense silence. They had been granted special dispensation to collaborate, officially to study the shield failure, unofficially to see what other breakthroughs might emerge from their partnership. "The quantum resonator wasn't designed as a weapon," Marcus explained, fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Its original purpose was medical, creating dimensional windows to extract tumors without invasive surgery." Ilara's compound eyes tracked multiple simulations simultaneously, yet it perfectly counteracts the phase variance in our shield technology. A coincidence that strains credulity. "Not coincidence, convergence," Marcus corrected, bringing up a new display. "Look here. When we combine your energy manipulation principles with our dimensional resonance, the applications become extraordinary." The simulation showed a spacecraft using the combined technology to create a dimensional fold, a shortcut through space-time that reduced interstellar travel from years to minutes. "This would revolutionize travel across the galaxy," Ilara whispered, mandibles close to her face in what Marcus had learned indicated awe. "Or communication, or energy production, or a dozen other applications," Marcus added. "This is what partnership could mean." Ilara was silent for a moment. "The Hegemony Council is divided. Many fear what humans might become rather than seeing what we could achieve together." Before Marcus could respond, his secure terminal chimed. The message was brief, encrypted using quantum protocols his team had developed. "What is it?" Ilara asked, noting his sudden paleness. "Our deep space monitoring station detected a hegemony fleet moving into position at the edge of our solar system," Marcus replied, voice tight. "At least 30 vessels, including what our analysis suggests are planet killers." Ilara's outer skin flushed a deep indigo, a sign of distress Marcus had never seen before. "Zach Swoon," she hissed. "He's never believed in diplomacy. To him, every problem has a military solution." She straightened, decision made. "We need to accelerate our research. The only way to prevent conflict now is to demonstrate that cooperation offers benefits that neither of us could achieve alone." "And if that fails?" Marcus asked. Ilara's 4 eyes fixed on him with grim determination. "Then your toy may need to shatter more than just my shield." Ilara's unauthorized entry into Marcus's private laboratory triggered 3 separate security protocols. Alarm lights flashed briefly before Marcus overrode them with his voice command. She had come alone, without her usual escort of hegemony security, a violation of diplomatic protocols that could cost her position or worse. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said, though he didn't sound surprised. The dark circles under his eyes testified to sleepless nights spent analyzing the fleet movements. "There was no time for official channels," Ilara replied, her translucent skin paler than usual, a physiological sign of extreme stress among her species. She plugged a crystalline data node into his terminal. "This is a complete tactical assessment of the fleet approaching Earth. 17 battlecruisers, 43 support vessels, and 3 planetary pacification platforms." Marcus's blood ran cold. Pacification platforms. Weaponry designed to render planets temporarily uninhabitable without destroying valuable resources. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of shame. "My people invented them during the Pyrite Uprising." Marcus absorbed the information in grim silence, watching as the terminal displayed the fleet's capabilities. Each ship possessed shields orders of magnitude stronger than Ilara's personal device. Why are you showing me this? Sharing military intelligence. This is treason against your people. My loyalty is to life, not destruction. Ilara replied simply. Zaxwoon has convinced much of the Council that humanity represents an existential threat. The vote was 9-7, authorizing preemptive action. Marcus ran shaking hands through his hair. We need to alert Earth's Defense Council immediately. Already underway through unofficial channels, Ilara confirmed. But conventional defenses will be useless against this fleet. I've studied your resonator technology extensively. And I believe we can scale it. Not just to disable shields, but to create a planetary defense grid that renders our weapons completely ineffective. Her mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. But we need resources, and we need time. Marcus was already sending encrypted messages to this global network of colleagues. How long before the fleet arrives? 3 days at standard approach velocity. But if they detect unusual activity, they may accelerate their timeline. Within hours, the highest levels of Earth's governments were in emergency session. Marcus and Ilara presented their findings to a panel of ashen-faced world leaders in a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. This is not an act sanctioned by the full hegemony, Ilara emphasized. Many of my people desire peaceful integration with humanity. Admiral Zaxwoon represents a military faction fearful of change. You're asking us to trust you, the Chinese premier said coldly, when your people's fleet approaches with planet killers. She risked everything to warn us, Marcus interjected. And she's helped develop our only viable defense. The plan they presented was audacious. Using the global satellite network, they would deploy thousands of modified resonator devices, creating a dimensional disruption field around Earth that would render the hegemony's energy weapons useless. Production has already begun, the American president confirmed, showing footage of factories worldwide reconfiguring to produce the devices. But can we deploy enough in time? We must, Marcus replied simply. As the meeting adjourned, Ilara approached Marcus in the corridor. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. Not all ships in that fleet fly under Zaxwoon's banner. Several captains secretly oppose this action. If your defense holds long enough, there may be division within their ranks. Marcus nodded grimly. We wanted partnership, he said, watching new satellite feeds showing the distant fleet's formation. They chose conflict. Let's hope we can change their minds before it's too late. Dawn broke over a transformed Earth. Rooftops, mountains, and oceans now hosted thousands of resonator devices, each no larger than a shoebox, but collectively forming humanity's last line of defense. The night's frantic work had left engineers exhausted but grimly satisfied as the global network came online with 12 hours to spare. In the Geneva Command Center, Marcus watched as the final synchronization protocols activated. Holographic displays showed a web of quantum connections enveloping the planet like a delicate lattice. Will it hold? Asked the UN Secretary-General, her voice steady despite the shadows of fear in her eyes. It's not about holding, Marcus explained. Traditional defenses try to block or absorb energy. Ours creates dimensional inconsistencies that prevent energy weapons from maintaining coherence. Ilara, now wearing an Earth emergency response uniform rather than hegemony colors, monitored communications from the approaching fleet. They've detected our preparations. The fleet has accelerated. Arrival in 43 minutes. Military leaders from 17 nations exchanged glances. Earth's conventional defenses, missiles, energy arrays, orbital platforms had been activated, but everyone knew they would be merely symbolic against the hegemony's technology. What about our own ships? Asked the Russian general. We have 37 vessels with modified resonators, Marcus confirmed, but they've been instructed to remain defensive only. This isn't about fighting back. It's about demonstrating that aggression is futile. The waiting was excruciating. Marcus found himself standing beside Ilara at the primary monitoring station. both of them watching as the massive hegemony warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The vessels were breathtaking. Crystalline structures kilometers long that seemed to bend light around them. The flagship is the immutable Doctrine, Ilara identified. Zaxwoon's personal vessel. Communications channels suddenly activated, projecting the Grand Admiral's image above the command center. His multiple eyes focused on Ilara with cold fury. Captain Voss, your treachery is noted, he said without preamble. Humanity's corruption spreads quickly. The Secretary-General stepped forward. Admiral, we seek peaceful resolution. We've attempted no hostile. Your very existence has become hostile. Zaxwoon interrupted. Your quantum technology represents an unacceptable threat to galactic stability. You will surrender all research and submit to hegemony authority, or face pacification. The transmission ended abruptly. Moments later, the forward ships of the hegemony fleet launched their first salvo. Massive energy pulses, visible from Earth's surface as brief flashes of light, streaked toward the planet. Marcus held his breath. Ilara's hand found his, her alien fingers intertwining with his human ones in a surprisingly familiar gesture of solidarity. The energy pulses approached Earth's atmosphere and simply vanished. No explosions, no impacts. The destructive force that could have vaporized cities simply ceased to exist as it encountered the dimensional resonance field. It's working, someone whispered. On tactical displays, the hegemony fleet reconfigured, launching a second, more concentrated barrage. Again, the energy weapons disappeared harmlessly against the invisible barrier. They're preparing planetary pacifiers, Ilara warned, reading the fleet's movements. Marcus nodded to the tactical officer. Execute Phase 2. Across Earth's orbit, the 37 human vessels activated their enhanced resonators simultaneously. Rather than creating a defensive field, they projected focused beams directly at the hegemony ships. Not to destroy, but to disrupt. Ship after ship found their systems temporarily disabled, weapons offline, shields fluctuating. We could destroy them now, noted the Chinese admiral pointedly. No, Marcus replied firmly. That's exactly what we won't do. He opened a channel to the fleet. Admiral Zaxwoon, your weapons cannot harm us, and we have temporarily disabled your vessels. We could have destroyed them, but that is not our way. We seek partnership, not dominance. For several long moments, silence reigned. Then, unexpectedly, a new voice came through the communications array. This is Captain Frel Corian of the hegemony vessel Enlightened Perspective, came the transmission. We wish to discuss terms of cooperation. 6 months after the standoff that history would later call the Resonance Confrontation, the Hegemony Council chamber had been redesigned. Where once 7 species had been arranged in a rigid hierarchy, now 8 distinct sections formed a perfect circle. The human delegation occupied the newest section, their area purposefully designed to be identical in size and prominence to the others. Marcus Chen, now serving as Earth's chief science liaison, adjusted his formal attire as he prepared to address the full council. Beside him, Ilara Voss, recently promoted to overseer of collaborative technologies, offered what he had come to recognize as an encouraging gesture. Her mandibles relaxed in their species' expression of confidence. Nervous, she asked quietly. Terrified, Marcus admitted with a small smile. But ready. The chamber's central platform illuminated as Marcus stepped forward. Above him, the holographic display showed the remarkable progress of the past 6 months. Joint research facilities established on 3 planets, 17 breakthrough technologies developed through quantum energy hybridization. Trade routes expanded by 47% due to new dimensional folding transportation systems. Esteemed representatives, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. Today we celebrate not merely technological advancement, but a fundamental shift in our collective understanding of collaboration. He gestured to the display as it shifted to show the newly commissioned hegemony vessel shared perspective. the first ship built jointly by all 8 species, incorporating technologies from each civilization. This vessel represents more than our combined engineering capabilities, Marcus continued. It embodies a principle that Captain Voss and I discovered in our initial work, that different approaches to the same universe don't have to compete. They can complement. In the audience, Admiral Zach Swoon, now relegated to a minor diplomatic role following the failed military action, watched with barely concealed resentment. Around him, however, the chamber resonated with approving pheromones, light patterns, and vocalizations. When Captain Voss called my device a toy, Marcus said, prompting a ripple of amused reactions, she wasn't entirely wrong. By her civilization's standards, it was primitive. What she couldn't have known was that sometimes simplicity reveals truths that complexity obscures. The hegemony chancellor rose from her position, her crystalline form catching the light as she approached Marcus. In her upper appendages, she carried an ornate object, a ceremonial shield that combined elements from all 8 civilizations. Its surface rippled with energy patterns that flowed like water, yet its structure incorporated quantum resonance technology that made it far stronger than any previous defense system. Engineer Chen, the Chancellor intoned, her voice melodic and formal. The Hegemony Council presents this shield of unity to Earth, not merely as a symbol, but as a functioning embodiment of our new relationship. It represents both protection and transparency, strength founded on mutual understanding rather than opacity. Marcus accepted the shield with appropriate reverence, momentarily surprised by its lightness despite its apparent solidity. On behalf of Earth, I am honored, he replied, following the protocol Ilara had drilled into him for weeks. Then, with a slight smile that wasn't in the script, he added, though I hope circumstances never require us to test whose technology shatters whose again. Unexpected laughter rippled through the chamber, a revolutionary sound in a space once dedicated to rigid formality. Later, at the reception celebrating Earth's full membership in the renamed Galactic Cooperative, Marcus found himself standing with Ilara on an observation deck overlooking the spectacular rings of the Hegemony homeworld. Did you ever imagine this outcome? He asked, watching ships of all 8 civilizations moving in harmonious traffic patterns. When I shattered your shield. Never, Ilara admitted. I expected humiliation. Instead, I found illumination. She gestured to the stars beyond. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson in all this. Sometimes what we perceive as a broken shield is actually a doorway, Marcus finished, raising his glass to hers.